Hi, I'm Jane, 14-time marathoner, 7-time Boston qualifier, mom of 3, and a full-time running coach. Recently, I asked my athletes to share with me the one most important thing they think they've learned in their running journey. And my athlete, Sarah, who I've been coaching for 2.5 years, had this to say. Taking hydration and nutrition seriously was a game changer for me. For some reason, I thought that I couldn't run after eating breakfast, otherwise I'd cramp up. Now I wear my hydration vest for anything over an hour and have gels every 30 minutes and 15 to 20 ounces of water per hour. It's amazing to come back from a long run and not feel like absolute garbage. Welcome back to my 6-video marathon training series where I lay out for you in about 1 hour everything that you need to run a really strong marathon this year. The first 2 videos covered choosing your race, choosing your training plan, as well as getting all the gear you need in order to have a strong marathon training block. And this is video 3, where I'm sharing one of the biggest pieces that I see newer marathoners struggle with, and that is fueling and hydration. So even if you've done a lot of running in the past, or perhaps even if you've done marathon training before and it didn't go well, you'll see that putting the pieces together for fueling and hydration for a good marathon training block looks a lot different, and a lot of that comes down to the long run. So that's really what we're going to focus on in this video today. However, I do have another video that I think would be really important for you to check out, and it lays out how to fuel for every run, any distance, any intensity. And in that video, I have a download that lays out in this nice graphic form exactly how to fuel for every run. But I'm going to go ahead and link it here too, in case you want to snag that and start looking into how to fuel even some of those shorter runs that you're doing. So let's get into this proper fueling and hydration, and that's also going to include electrolytes and what that can look like for you. So first one we're going to talk about is marathon training fueling. So essentially what you are going to be eating during that long run, how you're going to keep your energy levels up by eating the right amount of foods and getting in the right amount of carb count during those runs. Now, Sarah is really just one example of many athletes who have come to me under fueling their running, that they've previously tried to do long runs and had a really hard time getting through them. And this is often one of the biggest reasons why. They're not eating anything beforehand, and they're barely eating anything to get by during their long run. So we're going to be saying those are anything over 2 hours. And when we are talking about fueling those, we want to be getting 50 grams of carbs per hour, with some people being able to get up to 90 grams of carbs per hour. Generally, the recommendation is the more the better if your body can handle it. So that's why it's important to do this in training, that a lot of times it's going to take time to train your gut. So even if it doesn't feel like you can handle that in the beginning, you can start out on the smaller side. You don't have to be at 50 grams of carbs per hour right away. Maybe you're starting more at 30, 40 per hour, and then you're working up to that 50 with the goal to be at that by the end of marathon training. Now, at a bare minimum for what you're going to be doing on race day is 2 gels per hour. So that's not quite 50 with most of the gels that you're going to get. That's more around 45 grams of carbs per hour. So it's pretty close. If you haven't fueled well in the past or hardly at all, this is going to be a big jump up for you, but that should be the minimum that you're aiming for. So where does this fuel come from? There are lots of options. Gels are usually the easiest for most people. They're just really simple to take in. They're easy to carry. They're usually not messy, but there are other options. Those include chews. They can be fruit snacks like your kids might have, those applesauce pouches that might be in your cupboard. Candy works really well too. Gummy bears, Nerds gummy clusters, I feel like you're having a moment. And then the other biggest one a lot of my athletes use are carb drink mixes. So I have one here. This is Tailwind, but this is the one that I've used the longest and the most consistently, although I've tried a lot. And actually, I like to get in more than 50 grams of carbs per hour. My minimum is really at least 60. I like to be at 70 for the marathon. And so really the only way that I'm going to be doing that is with a combination combination. So that might work really well for you too. Maybe you don't want to just do gels for everything. You like to incorporate candy. You can do both. It doesn't have to be the same throughout. And I think that works really well for people to have something different. For me personally, I've spent a really long time perfecting what I do. And if you want to see what that would actually look like during the marathon, where I'm actually taking in the gels and I'm actually taking in the tailwind, I recommend a video where I talk about how I fueled my best marathon yet. So I'll go ahead and link that up here if you want to see how you might be able to utilize some of that for yourself. Okay, so next we're getting into the hydration piece of marathon training. Generally, I think this is a piece where most people do well overall, but maybe struggle in the long runs or just figuring out how much they need. And oftentimes this is because they're just not taking enough. I see this a lot of times because they just don't want to carry anything, or they want to carry the absolute minimum. And then they're struggling with the long run and not doing as well as they could be, not having the energy they need, especially on those warmer runs. That summertime training, this makes a massive difference. So if you're seeing that you're struggling a lot of times it does come down to a lack of hydration. So for long runs, a good target is about 16 ounces of water per hour, but there is a pretty wide range. So if we're just kind of talking about the normal range, I'd say 12 to 20 ounces of water per hour is working for most people. Some people are going to need more than that, especially if they're in a very hot and humid climate and they're a heavy sweater. So this is one of those things where you're really going to need to be dialing it in and figuring out what you need. You might as well have more than you think that you need, so that you have access to it if you feel like you need it. And you may even have it on you, get through a run and feel like you didn't have enough. And that's okay. You reflect and then you change for next time and think, okay, I felt pretty thirsty at the end and my energy levels were waning. I probably need to take more in next time. So in this video, I just really wanted to focus on how much you're taking in and what. In the last video where I talked about gear, I talked about how to hold all of this. So this is just one example, this Nathan handheld that I love. I talked about hydration vests, belts, things like that. So I recommend checking that out in case you're concerned about, oh my gosh, how am I going to carry all of this? Because that's a really common question that I get. Continuing on with this hydration piece, we want to talk about electrolyte intake, which is also really important for absorbing that hydration that you're taking in. It's really essential for maintaining that proper fluid balance within your body, and is going to keep those energy levels up that we know are so important in the runs that you're doing, especially those long runs where you're out there for a really long time and expecting a lot of your body. And though this falls in the hydration category, you actually can supplement electrolytes in the fuel that you're taking. So when we're talking about sources that you're going to utilize for those electrolytes, there's a lot of different options. The tailwind that I talked about before, so the carb drink, this actually has a good amount of electrolytes in it. You could pour something like this into your water, which really doesn't have carbs, but it has quite a few electrolytes. And when I'm saying electrolytes, guys, I'm really mostly talking about sodium. So there's 5 main electrolytes that you're getting, but sodium is the one that your body needs the most when we're talking about keeping those energy levels up and what you're really focusing on when you're choosing these products. Before I was showing the Huma gels, these are the tried and true gels that I use, Huma, because they have different options in them. I really like the taste. This one is a double electrolyte gel, so you can look for that within your gels. Some of the gels have no sodium, so it's really important to look at that when you're choosing your products and deciding what it is that you want to use, and when you're trying to figure out how much sodium you're actually getting. I also really like these electrolyte caps from Salt Stick. I also have Element here. This has 1,000 milligrams per packet. So that's a lot. If you're someone who needs a lot more sodium, or you're someone really hot, you're very, very sweaty, this would be a good option. So when we're talking about how much you need of the sodium, typically we're targeting 200 to 600 milligrams of sodium per hour. Some people are going to be needing to go even more beyond the 600 milligrams. So unlike fueling, where I see that people really need to have a lot of fuel to get through the long run strong and the marathon strong, there's a lot more variance when it comes to hydration. And that's because people are running in different places, and we have people who are really heavy sweaters, people who are really light sweaters, we have salty sweaters, not very salty sweaters. So this is going to make a big difference. And there are ways out there to kind of calculate what you need for you. I've personally never done that. It's really just been more of trial and error, trying to figure out what I need. And yes, I've been doing this a long time, but even when I started out, this was just like, okay, I'm gonna like take in some more sodium today. Let's see how I feel, and not stressing too much about these specific numbers. And obviously, if you're not feeling good at the end of the run, these are the three things that you want to be looking at. Are you taking in enough fuel? Are you taking in enough water? Are you taking in enough electrolytes? And you can go from there in trying to perfect what that looks like for you. And ultimately, it's really important to practice this in training so that you are ready for that big day. Chances are you're not going to get it right those first few runs, and that's fine. These are all opportunities to learn. That's what I'm always telling my athletes. It's never a failure. It's just an opportunity to figure out what you need to do differently for next time. So in the next video, I'm going to be sharing how important it is to execute your runs with intention during your marathon training block, and what kind of running you should be doing to run your strongest marathon when you show up on race day. Thanks for joining me in this one, guys. I hope you can join me in the next one, and I'll see you then.